He invented the computer, founded probability theory, then walked away because he found something numbers couldn't measure. There's a moment in every genius's life when the world realizes it cannot contain them. For Isaac Newton, it was an apple. For Einstein, it was a thought experiment on a beam of light. For Blaise Pascal, it was a locked door. His father had hidden all the books, forbidden him from learning mathematics, told him it was too dangerous, too consuming, that it would devour him whole. Blaise Pascal was 12 years old, and he was about to prove that genius does not wait for permission. This is the story of a mind that woke up too early, a body that never stopped breaking, and a boy who, in defiance of every limitation placed upon him, would rewrite the rules of reality itself. But first, he had to survive childhood. June 19th, 1623, Clermont-Ferrand, France, a city nestled in the volcanic highlands of Auvergne, where ancient craters sleep beneath green hills and the air tastes of sulfur and stone. In a modest home on a narrow street, a woman is giving birth. Her name is Antoinette Began. She is 25 years old, and she is dying. The baby arrives weak, underweight, struggling to breathe. They name him Blaise. In French, the name means to lisp, to stammer, a name for someone whose speech is imperfect, halting, broken. It is, in hindsight, cruelly prophetic, because Blaise Pascal will spend his entire life trying to speak truths that language cannot hold. His mother dies 3 years later. Blaise is too young to remember her face, but he will remember the silence she left behind. And that silence, empty, absolute, suffocating, will haunt him for the rest of his life. From the beginning, Blaise Pascal's body is at war with itself. Headaches split his skull like lightning. His stomach refuses food. He cannot run without collapsing, cannot play without pain. His father, Etienne Pascal, watches his son with a desperate vigilance of a man who has already lost too much. Etienne is a magistrate, a civil servant, a man of order and reason, but he is also an amateur mathematician, obsessed with numbers, with patterns, with the hidden geometries of the universe. And when he looks at his son, this frail, trembling, brilliant boy, he sees something that terrifies him. He sees himself. Etienne makes a decision. No mathematics. Not yet. Not until Blaise is older, stronger, ready to handle the weight of it. He removes every geometry book from the house, locks away the treatises on Euclid, on Apollonius, on Archimedes. He tells Blaise that mathematics is a language reserved for adults, too abstract, too difficult, too dangerous for a child. Blaise nods, smiles, says nothing. But inside, something ignites. You see, there's a particular kind of hunger that comes from being told you cannot have something. A hunger that grows in the dark, that feeds on prohibition, that becomes insatiable. And Blaise Pascal, at 12 years old, is starving. One afternoon, while his father is away on business, Blaise sneaks into the study. He looks for the books. They are gone. He looks for the papers. They are locked away. He sits on the floor, alone, surrounded by emptiness. And then, slowly, carefully, he begins to draw. A line, a circle, a triangle. He does not know the theorems. He does not know the proofs. He does not even know the names of the shapes he is creating. But he understands something deeper than names. He understands that shapes have rules, that angles have relationships, that if you draw a triangle, any triangle, and measure its interior angles, they will always, always, always add up to the same total, 180 degrees. He does not know this is called Euclid's 32nd proposition. He does not know that this truth has been known for 2,000 years. He only knows that it is true. And so, on the floor of his father's empty study, using nothing but charcoal and intuition, 12-year-old Blaise Pascal reinvents Euclid's geometry from scratch, alone, without a single book. When Etienne returns home and finds his son surrounded by geometric proofs, he cannot speak. He cannot speak. He simply kneels beside his boy, places a trembling hand on his shoulder, and weeps.
because he knows in that moment that his son is not like other children. His son is something the world has not seen in a very long time. His son is inevitable. Etienne Pascal makes a new decision. If he cannot stop his son from learning mathematics, then he will guide him, protect him, introduce him to the greatest minds in France. He moves the family to Paris. There, in the intellectual heart of Europe, Blaise is introduced to a circle of scholars, philosophers, and mathematicians who meet regularly to discuss the latest discoveries in science and reason. They call themselves l'Académie Parisienne. They are brilliant men, seasoned, educated, accomplished, and sitting among them, pale and silent, is a 16-year-old boy. At first, they humor him, smile politely, assume he is there because of his father's reputation. Then Blaise begins to speak. He describes a theorem he has been working on, a geometric principle involving conic sections, ellipses, parabolas, hyperbolas, shapes formed when a plane intersects a cone. The room grows quiet. He explains that if you inscribe a hexagon within any conic section and extend the opposite sides of the hexagon until they intersect, those 3 points of intersection will always, always, always lie on a single straight line. Always. No matter the hexagon, no matter the conic section. It is a truth so elegant, so unexpected, so utterly fundamental that it will later be called Pascal's theorem. And it will become a cornerstone of projective geometry, a field of mathematics that will one day help engineers design bridges, architects plan buildings, and computer scientists render three-dimensional graphics on two-dimensional screens. But in that moment, in that room, all the scholars can do is stare, because the boy who just rewrote a branch of mathematics is not yet old enough to grow a beard. René Descartes, the most famous philosopher in Europe, hears about the theorem. He reads it, rereads it, checks the proof again and again. He writes to Etienne Pascal, "I cannot believe a boy of 16 wrote this. It is too advanced, too sophisticated. Are you sure he did not copy it from someone else?" Etienne writes back with a single sentence, "My son copies from no one. He is the original." Descartes never replies. But brilliance is not a gift, it is a burden, and Blaise Pascal feels it every day. His body continues to fail him, the headaches worsen, the stomach pains become unbearable. Some nights he cannot sleep, some days he cannot stand. Doctors are summoned, they prescribe rest, herbs, bloodletting, useless remedies for a condition they do not understand. Because what Blaise Pascal suffers from is not just illness, it is the cost of being alive in a body that was never built to house a mind like his. Imagine it. Imagine being 16 years old and understanding truths that have eluded humanity for centuries. Imagine seeing patterns in the world that no one else can see. Imagine knowing with absolute certainty that the universe operates according to laws, beautiful, perfect, immutable laws, and that you alone have been chosen to translate them. And then imagine that every thought, every insight, every revelation comes with a price. A migraine that blinds you, a pain that doubles you, a body that whispers every day, "You are not meant to live this long." Blaise Pascal is 17 years old, and he already knows he is dying. But he is not afraid, because he has discovered something more powerful than fear. He has discovered that the mind can transcend the body, that thought can outlive flesh, that even if he dies tomorrow, his ideas will live forever. And so, despite the pain, despite the fragility, despite the certainty of an early grave, Blaise Pascal makes a choice. He will not waste a single moment. He will not wait for permission. He will not apologize for his genius. He will burn as brightly as he can, for as long as he can, and when the flame finally goes out, the world will remember that he was here, that he mattered, that he changed everything. But genius alone is not enough. The world does not care about theorems unless they solve problems. It does not care about ideas unless they improve lives. And so, as Blaise Pascal enters his 20s, he makes a decision that will alter the course of human history. He will take his mind, his brilliant, impossible, unstoppable mind, and he will build something real, something you can touch, something you can use, something that will change the way humanity works forever. He will build a machine, and that machine will be the ancestor of every computer, every calculator, every device you have ever used to ease the burden of thought. But first, he had to watch his father suffer. If you're captivated by the story of Blaise Pascal, this boy who defied death, redefined mathematics, and built the future with his own hands, then you need to see what happens next. Because the machine he's about to create, it's not just a calculator, it's the birth of the modern world. Subscribe to Numbers and Narratives, hit the bell icon,
and join me as we follow Pascal from genius child to revolutionary inventor to the mystic who walked away from science entirely. Because trust me, you have no idea where this story's going, and neither did he.
1642. The world is tearing itself apart. In England, civil war has erupted, king against parliament, brother against brother. The streets of London run red with blood. In Germany, the 30 Years' War drags on, a conflict so brutal, so consuming, that it will kill 8 million people before it ends. Entire cities have been razed, entire populations erased. And in France, Cardinal Richelieu tightens his grip on power, crushing dissent, consolidating control, building an absolute monarchy that will not tolerate opposition. This is the world Blaise Pascal inherits at 19 years old. A world at war, a world in chaos, a world where suffering is the only constant. But Pascal is not thinking about war. He is thinking about his father. Etienne Pascal has been appointed tax commissioner for Upper Normandy. It is a prestigious position, an important position, and an absolutely crushing position. Every day, Etienne sits at his desk surrounded by ledgers, receipts, tax records stretching back months, sometimes years, numbers upon numbers upon numbers, addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. He must calculate tax revenues for the entire region. He must account for every transaction, every payment, every debt owed to the crown. And he must do it all by hand. Hour after hour, day after day, week after week. His eyes burn, his hands cramp, his mind begins to blur. And Blaise watches. He watches his father age before his eyes, watches the exhaustion carve lines into his face, watches the man who saved him, who protected him, who unlocked his genius, slowly break under the weight of endless calculation. And one night, as Blaise sits beside his father's desk, watching him struggle through yet another column of figures, a thought crystallizes in his mind. What if numbers could calculate themselves? What if thought could become metal? What if reason could be mechanized? It is a revolutionary idea, a heretical idea, because in 1642, calculation is considered a uniquely human act, something that requires consciousness, intelligence, soul. But Blaise Pascal sees something different. He sees that addition is not creativity, it is repetition. That subtraction is not insight, it is process. That calculation, at its core, is nothing more than a series of mechanical steps, steps that could, theoretically, be performed by anything capable of following rules. Even a machine, especially a machine. And so, in the dim candlelight of his father's study, 19-year-old Blaise Pascal decides to do something that has never been done before. He decides to build a thinking machine. But building a machine is not like proving a theorem.
A theorem exists in the realm of pure thought, perfect, eternal, unchanging. A machine exists in the realm of metal and wood, imperfect, breakable, real. Pascal begins with sketches, dozens of them, hundreds of them, gears, wheels, springs, levers. How do you make metal remember? How do you make brass carry a digit from one column to the next? How do you translate the abstract logic of addition into the physical motion of rotating wheels? He works through the night, every night. His body protests, the headaches return with a vengeance, his stomach refuses food. Some mornings he can barely stand, but he does not stop. Because this is not just about easing his father's burden anymore. This is about proving something fundamental, that the human mind is not trapped inside the human body, that thought can be externalized, materialized, built, that reason itself can be liberated from flesh. The first prototype fails. The gears jam, the wheels slip, the mechanism locks up after a single rotation. Pascal tears it apart, starts again. The second prototype fails. The third fails. The fourth, the fifth, the sixth, all failures. Each time Pascal learns something new, the angle of the gear teeth, the tension of the springs, the weight of the wheels. He becomes obsessed with precision, with tolerances measured in fractions of millimeters, with the exact ratio between input and output. Because a calculator cannot be close enough, it must be exact, every time, without exception. A single error, one misaligned gear, one loose spring, and the entire machine becomes useless. Pascal pushes himself harder, works longer, sleeps less. His friends beg him to rest, his father begs him to stop. But Pascal cannot stop, because he has seen something that no one else has seen. He has seen the future. And the future is a world where human beings no longer waste their lives performing tasks that machines can do better. Prototype number 17. It is late winter 1644. Pascal has been working for 2 years. He places the machine on his father's desk. It is beautiful in a strange, alien way. Brass and wood, gears visible through small windows, 8 rotating dials numbered 0 through 9. Etienne stares at it. He does not understand. Pascal smiles. His hands are trembling. "Watch," he says. He turns the first dial, sets it to 3. He turns the second dial, sets it to 5. Then, slowly, carefully, he engages the mechanism. The gears begin to turn, the wheels rotate, and the third dial, untouched by human hands, clicks into position. 8. 3 plus 5 equals 8. Etienne's gasp, a sop strikes from his throat. Pascal turns the first dial again, sets it to 7. He turns the second dial, sets it to 9. He engages the mechanism. The gears turn, the wheels rotate, and this time something extraordinary happens. The third dial clicks past 9, resets to 0, and the fourth dial, the tens column, advances by 1. 16. 7 plus 9 equals 16. The machine has carried a digit, all by itself, without thought, without consciousness, without soul. It has performed an act of pure reason using nothing but metal and motion. Etienne Pascal, the man who once forbade his son from learning mathematics, falls into his chair and weeps, not from sadness, from awe, because he understands in that moment what his son has done. Blaise has not just built a tool, he has built proof. Proof that the line between mind and matter is thinner than anyone imagined. Proof that thought is not magic, it is mechanism. Proof that the future of humanity will not be limited by the speed of human calculation, but by the ingenuity of human design. The machine sits on the desk, gears gleaming in candlelight, waiting. Pascal names it the Pascaline, and the modern world begins. But the Pascaline is imperfect. It is heavy, expensive, difficult to manufacture. Each machine requires hundreds of precisely crafted components. Each gear must be cut hand. Each spring must be calibrated individually. Pascal builds over 50 prototypes over the next decade, 50 variations, 50 attempts to make the machine cheaper, faster, more reliable. Some work beautifully, some fail catastrophically, but each one teaches him something. And slowly, painfully, obsessively, Pascal refines his creation. He demonstrates the Pascaline to Queen Christina of Sweden, to Cardinal Richelieu, to the leading scientists and mathematicians of Europe. Some are amazed, some are skeptical, some call it a curiosity, a novelty, a toy. But a few, a precious few, see what Pascal sees. They see that this is not the end, this is the beginning. Because if a machine can add, then eventually a machine can multiply. If a machine can multiply, then eventually a machine can calculate logarithms. If a machine can calculate logarithms, then eventually machines will not need humans to tell them what to calculate at all. They will think for themselves. 300 years later, engineers at IBM will build the first electronic computers. They will trace their lineage back through Charles Babbage's analytical engine, through Leibniz's stepped reckoner, through Wilhelm Schickard's calculating clock. And at the root of that genealogy, they will find a 19-year-old boy in 17th century France, dying slowly, building something that should not have been possible. Building the future with his bare hands. Every computer you have ever touched, every calculator, every smartphone, every device that performs arithmetic faster than the human mind, they all descend from this moment. They all descend from a boy who watched his
father suffer and decided that suffering was unnecessary. That reason could be liberation. That machines could save us from drudgery. That thought could become tool. Pascal believed this with every fiber of his being, and for a few brief years he thought he had solved the human condition. But he was about to discover something that no machine could calculate. 1646. Pascal is 23 years old. His body is failing faster now. The headaches are constant. The pain is unbearable. But his mind is sharper than ever. He has finished the Pascaline, demonstrated it across Europe, proven that machines can think. And now he turns his attention to something even more fundamental, the nature of reality itself. Because there is a question that has haunted philosophers since the time of Aristotle. Why does water rise in a pump? It seems simple. You pull the handle, water rises up the pipe. Magic. But it is not magic. Aristotle said it was because nature abhors a vacuum, that the universe itself refuses to allow empty space to exist, that water rises because the alternative, a void, is impossible. For 2,000 years, this explanation satisfied everyone, except Pascal. Because Pascal has read about an Italian scientist named Evangelista Torricelli, who performed a strange experiment. Torricelli filled a glass tube with mercury, sealed one end, then inverted it into a dish of mercury. The mercury in the tube fell, but not all the way. It stopped, hung suspended, leaving an empty space at the top of the tube. A vacuum. A void, a place where nothing existed. Aristotle was wrong. Nature does not abhor a vacuum. Nature permits it, tolerates it, allows it to exist. But if Aristotle was wrong about vacuums, then why does water rise in a pump? Pascal forms a hypothesis.
What if water does not rise because of some mystical force? What if it rises because of pressure? What if the weight of the atmosphere, the invisible ocean of air pressing down on every surface of the earth, is what pushes water up a pipe when you create a void above it? If that is true, then Pascal realizes the experiment is simple. If atmospheric pressure is real, then it should decrease with altitude. The higher you climb, the less air above you, the lower the mercury should hang in the tube. It is a testable hypothesis, and testing it requires climbing a mountain. Puy de Dôme, a volcanic peak in central France, nearly 5,000 feet high. Pascal is too weak to make the climb himself. His body would never survive the ascent. So he sends his brother-in-law, Florent Perrier, with precise instructions. Measure the height of mercury in a barometer at the base of the mountain. Carry the barometer to the summit. Measure again. If the mercury drops, then pressure is real. If it does not, then Aristotle was all right all along, and Pascal's entire theory is wrong. Florent climbs. At the base, the mercury stands at 26 inches. At the summit, 23 inches. 3 inches lower, exactly as Pascal predicted. The news reaches Pascal in Paris. He reads Florent's report, checks the numbers, rechecks them. And then, alone in his study, he allows himself a single moment of triumph. He has done it again. He has taken a mystery that philosophers debated for 2 millennia and solved it with a single experiment. No appeals to authority, no mystical explanations, no ancient texts, just observation, measurement, reason. Pascal writes up his findings, publishes them, sends copies to scientists across Europe. The response is immediate and divided. Some hail him as a genius, the man who proved that vacuums exist, that atmospheric pressure is real, that the universe operates according to discoverable laws. Others attack him, call him arrogant, accuse him of blasphemy, insist that Aristotle cannot be so easily dismissed. But Pascal does not care about the critics, because he has proven something far more important than atmospheric pressure. He has proven that the world is not governed by intuition or tradition or the weight of ancient authority. The world is governed by laws. Laws that can be discovered, tested, known. Laws that do not care about your rank, your title, your reputation. Laws that exist whether you believe them or not. And for Pascal, this is not just science. This is liberation. Because if the universe operates according to laws, then human beings can learn those laws. And if human beings can learn those laws, then human beings can master them. And if human beings can master them, then suffering, pointless, preventable suffering, can be eliminated. The Pascaline eliminated the suffering of endless calculation. The barometer experiments eliminated the suffering of ignorance. And Pascal begins to believe, truly, deeply, dangerously believe, that reason can solve everything. That science can answer every question. That mathematics can illuminate every shadow. That given enough time, enough thought, enough genius, humanity can build a perfect world. He is 24 years old. He has invented the computer, proven that vacuums exist, contributed to fluid mechanics, hydraulics, and the physics of pressure. He is at the height of his powers, the peak of his fame. He is confident, brilliant, unstoppable. And he is about to meet something that will shatter that confidence completely. Something that reason cannot explain. Something that mathematics cannot measure. Something that will force him to ask a question he has never asked before.
What if the universe is not just governed by laws? What if it is also governed by chance? 1650. Paris. A gambler approaches Pascal with a problem. The man's name is Antoine Gombeau, Chevalier de Mer. He is charming, witty, and deeply troubled by a mathematical puzzle that has been keeping him awake at night. He explains the problem to Pascal over wine. Imagine two gamblers playing a game of chance. They agree that the first to win 3 rounds takes the entire pot. But after the first gambler has won 2 rounds and the second has won 1, they are forced to stop. The game is unfinished. How do you divide the stakes fairly? Pascal listens, thinks, realizes immediately that this is not a question about gambling. This is a question about probability, about expectation, about how to fairly distribute outcomes when the future is uncertain. And Pascal has no idea how to solve it. No one does, because probability theory, the mathematics of chance, of risk, of uncertainty, doesn't exist yet. Pascal takes the problem to Pierre de Fermat, the greatest mathematician in France, and together, through a series of letters exchanged over months, they invent an entire field of mathematics. They call it the doctrine of chances, but we call it probability theory, and it will change everything. Pascal and Fermat's correspondence is careful, methodical, beautiful. They begin with the problem of points, the unfinished game. If the first gambler needs 1 more round and the second needs 2 more rounds, what are the possible outcomes if they continued playing? Pascal maps it out. The first gambler could win immediately, or the second could win, forcing a final round. If the second wins, then the final round is 50-50. So the first gambler's chances are win immediately or win half the time if it goes to a final round. 3 out of 4 scenarios end with the first gambler winning. 1 out of 4 ends with the second winning. So the pot should be divided 3-1. It is elegant, logical, perfect. But Fermat sees something deeper. What they have actually created is a way to mathematically represent the future, not as a single inevitable outcome, but as a range of possibilities, each weighted by its likelihood. This is not just a tool for gamblers. This is a framework for understanding risk, for making decisions under uncertainty, for navigating a world where we can never know what will happen next, but we can calculate what might happen. Insurance companies will use this mathematics to price policy.
Investors will use it to hedge bets. Doctors will use it to communicate risk to patients. Engineers will use it to design bridges that can withstand probabilistic loads. Governments will use it to forecast epidemics, plan disasters, allocate resources. Every time someone says there is a 30% chance of rain, they are using Pascal's mathematics. Every time someone says the odds are in your favor, they are using Pascal's logic. Every time someone makes a decision based on incomplete information, which is every decision, every day for every human being, they are standing on the foundation that Pascal and Fermat built in 1654. But here is the tragedy. Pascal creates a mathematics of uncertainty and immediately realizes something horrifying. Life itself is an unfinished game. You do not know when it will end. You do not know what the stakes are. You do not know if you are winning or losing. All you know is that the game will end, eventually, without warning. And when it does, there are no more rounds, no more chances, no more time. Pascal, who has spent his entire life believing that reason can solve everything, suddenly confronts a problem that reason cannot touch: mortality, uncertainty, the void.
And for the first time in his life, Blaise Pascal is afraid. Not of death, he has been dying his whole life, but of meaninglessness. Because if life is just probability, just chance, just a roll of dice in an indifferent universe, then what is the point of genius? What is the point of suffering? What is the point of anything? Pascal has measured the atmosphere, built machines, invented entire fields of mathematics, but he cannot answer this question, and it is breaking him. 1653. Pascal is 30 years old. He stops publishing, stops attending academic gatherings, stops working on the Pascaline. He withdraws into himself, spends hours staring at equations he can no longer solve. His friends worry, his family begs him to return to science, but Pascal is done with science, because science has given him everything except the one thing he needs most, a reason to keep living. He writes in his journal, late at night, words that will haunt him for the rest of his life. I look at the terrifying spaces of the universe which surround me, and I find myself attached to one corner of this vast expanse, without knowing why I am placed here rather than elsewhere, nor why the brief time allotted to me should be assigned to this moment rather than another. I see nothing but infinities on all sides, which enclose me like an atom. All I know is that I must soon die. But what I know least of all is this very death, which I cannot escape. This is not the voice of a genius. This is the voice of a man drowning. And then, on a cold November night in 1654, something happens. Something Pascal will never be able to explain. Something that will split his life into before and after. Something that will make him question whether reason is enough, whether machines are salvation, whether the universe is just mathematics, or whether mathematics is just the surface of something infinitely deeper. The carriage accident is coming. The night of fire is coming, and Blaise Pascal, inventor, mathematician, builder of thinking machines, is about to discover that the most important questions cannot be calculated. They can only be answered by faith.
November 7th, 1654. Blaise Pascal is crossing the Noilly Bridge in a horse-drawn carriage. It is late afternoon. The sun is setting over the Seine. The water below is dark, cold, moving fast. Pascal sits alone in the carriage, lost in thought. He has just come from a meeting with friends, philosophers, scientists, men who still believe that reason can illuminate everything, men who still have hope. Pascal does not have hope anymore. He is 31 years old. His body is deteriorating. The headaches are worse. The stomach pains are constant. He sleeps poorly, eats less. Some days he can barely walk. But it is not his body that troubles him most. It is his mind. Because for the first time in his life, his mind has failed him. He has built machines, proven theorems, invented probability theory, demonstrated that the universe operates according to discoverable laws, but none of it has answered the only question that matters. Why? Why do we exist? Why do we suffer? Why do any of our accomplishments matter if we all die anyway? These are not mathematical questions. They cannot be solved with equations. They cannot be proven with experiments. And Pascal, who has spent his entire life believing that reason is the answer to everything, has finally encountered a problem that reason cannot touch. The carriage rolls forward. The wheels clatter against the wooden bridge. The horses snort, their breath visible in the cold November air. And then, without warning, something spooks them. The horses bolt.
The carriage lurches violently to the left. Pascal is thrown against the side panel. He hears the driver screaming, pulling hard on the reins, trying desperately to control the animals. But the horses do not stop. They run faster, panic driving them forward, toward the edge of the bridge, toward the low stone wall that separates the road from the 40-foot drop to the river below. Pascal sees it happening, as if in slow motion. The horses reach the wall. Their momentum carries them over. They fall. The carriage tilts. The front wheels lift off the ground. For one impossible, eternal moment, the entire vehicle hangs, suspended over the Seine, balanced on the edge between solid ground and empty air. Pascal stares into the void. He sees the water below, dark, infinite, waiting. He thinks, "This is how I die." And in that moment, something breaks inside him. Not fear. He has lived with fear his entire life, but certainty. The certainty that he understands the world, that his mind is enough, that reason can save him. Because reason cannot stop gravity. Equations cannot catch a falling carriage. Mathematics cannot pull him back from the edge of death. He is helpless, completely, utterly, absolutely helpless. And then, impossibly, the reins holding the horses snap. The horses fall into the Seine, alone, and the carriage, freed of their weight, crashes backward onto the bridge. Intact, upright, safe. Pascal sits in the wreckage, trembling, gasping for breath. He is alive. He should not be alive. By every law of physics, by every calculation of momentum and weight and trajectory, he should be dead. But he is not. And Pascal does not know why. He does not know if it was chance or fate or something else entirely. All he knows is that he has just stared into the abyss, and the abyss stared back, and it was not empty.
He is only found by the ways taught in the gospel, greatness of the human soul. The experience lasts for 2 hours, maybe 3. Pascal loses track of time. When it finally fades, when the light recedes and the room returns to darkness and silence, Pascal sits in stunned stillness. He looks at the parchment, reads what he has written, does not remember writing most of it.
But he knows with absolute conviction that every word is true. He folds the paper carefully, stitches it into the lining of his coat. He will wear it every day for the rest of his life. He will never speak of it publicly, never publish it, never show it to anyone, but he will keep it close, against his heart, a reminder of the night when everything changed, the night when Blaise Pascal, mathematician, inventor, scientist, genius, died, and something else was born. The weeks that follow are disorienting. Pascal tries to return to his old life, tries to attend scientific gatherings, to discuss mathematical problems, to engage with the questions that once consumed him, but he cannot, because everything seems trivial now, meaningless. What does it matter if you can calculate the area under a curve if you do not know why the curve exists? What does it matter if you can build a machine that adds numbers if you do not know what the numbers are for? What does it matter if you can measure atmospheric pressure if you do not understand the weight of your own soul? Pascal's friends notice the change immediately. He is quieter, more withdrawn. He speaks less about science and more about something they cannot quite name. Some of them worry. Some of them mock, some of them distance themselves entirely. But Pascal does not care, because he has tasted something that their equations cannot capture.
He has seen something that their experiments cannot verify. He has encountered the infinite, and you cannot encounter the infinite and return unchanged. The weeks that follow, Jacqueline, Pascal's younger sister, sees the transformation more clearly than anyone. She has been a nun at the convent of Port Royal for years now, part of a movement called Jansenism, a reform movement within Catholicism that emphasizes grace, humility, and the absolute sovereignty of God. The Jansenists believe that human beings are fundamentally broken, that reason alone cannot save us, that we need something beyond ourselves, something we cannot earn, cannot calculate, cannot achieve through effort. We need grace. For years, Pascal dismissed his sister's faith as naive, as wishful thinking, as the refuge of people who could not handle the harshness of reality. But now, after the bridge, after the fire, after the night that shattered his certainty, Pascal understands. Jacqueline was right, and he was wrong. He visits her at Port Royal, sits with her in the quiet chapel, does not speak for a long time. Finally, he says, "I was blind." Jacqueline takes his hand. "No, Blaise, you were looking in the wrong direction. I thought reason could explain everything. It can explain many things, but not the most important things. I built a machine that thinks, and now you must become a man who prays." Pascal nods slowly, tears well in his eyes. "I do not know how." Jacqueline smiles. "Neither did I, but God does not require expertise. He only requires surrender." Surrender. The word hits Pascal like a blow, because surrender is the opposite of everything he has ever done. His entire life has been about mastery, control, understanding, bending the world to the power of his intellect. But the bridge taught him that control is an illusion, and the fire taught him that there are realities beyond his intellect. And now his sister is telling him that the only way forward is to let go, to stop grasping, stop calculating, stop trying to earn his place in the universe through brilliance, to simply surrender. It is the hardest thing Pascal has ever been asked to do. Harder than building the Pascaline, harder than climbing mountains with barometers, harder than inventing probability theory, because it requires him to admit something that no genius wants to admit, that he does not have all the answers, that he never did, that he never will, and that this is not a failure. It is a liberation. Pascal withdraws from public life. He stops attending the academy, stops publishing scientific papers, stops working on machines and experiments and theorems. His friends are baffled. His colleagues are angry. Some accuse him of wasting his genius, of throwing away his potential, of betraying the cause of reason. But Pascal does not argue with them. Because how do you explain fire to someone who has only known ice? How do you describe light to someone who has only lived in darkness? How do you communicate certainty to someone who has only known doubt? You cannot. So Pascal stops trying. He moves closer to Port Royal, begins attending Mass regularly, begins reading Scripture not as literature but as truth, begins praying not as ritual but as conversation, and slowly, painfully, awkwardly, like a man learning to walk after years of paralysis, Pascal learns to live in a new way. Not as a scientist who believes in God, but as a believer who happens to understand science. The order matters, because for years Pascal tried to fit God into his equations, tried to make faith compatible with reason, tried to prove that belief was logical. But now he understands that it doesn't work that way.
Faith is not the conclusion of an argument, it is the foundation beneath the argument. You don't reason your way to God, you encounter God, and then you reason about everything else. This is the inversion, the revolution, the thing that changes everything. And it is also the thing that makes Pascal's next project inevitable. Because if faith cannot be proven through reason, but reason can prepare you for faith, if logic can take you to the edge of belief, even if it cannot push you over, then Pascal has one final contribution to make, one final theorem, one final calculation, one final machine. Not a machine of brass and gears, but a machine of words and arguments and relentless, unforgiving logic. A proof that will haunt philosophy for the next 4 centuries. A wager that will force every rational person to confront the same choice he faced on that November night. Believe or do not believe, but understand the stakes, because Pascal has calculated them, and the numbers are terrifying. But he does not write it yet, because first he must live it. For the next few years, Pascal lives in deliberate simplicity. He gives away most of his wealth, serves the poor, visits the sick, spends hours in prayer. His body continues to deteriorate. The pain is worse than ever. Some days he cannot eat, some nights he cannot sleep. But there is a peace in him now that was not there before. Not happiness. Pascal is not happy. He is in constant pain, isolated from his former friends, misunderstood by almost everyone who knew him. But he is not drowning anymore, because he has found something to hold on to. Not an argument, not a proof, not a theorem, but a presence. The same presence that held him on the bridge, the same presence that filled his room with fire, the same presence that whispers in the silence between his heartbeats, "You are not alone."
But that comes later. For now, in 1658, Pascal simply writes. He writes about the human condition, about our smallness in the face of infinity, about our greatness despite our smallness. He writes, "Man is only a reed, the weakest in nature, but he is a thinking reed. The entire universe need not arm itself to crush him. A vapor, a drop of water suffices to kill him. But if the universe were to crush him, man would still be more noble than that which kills him, because he knows that he dies, and the advantage the universe has over him. The universe knows nothing of this." He writes about the 2 infinities, the infinitely large, the cosmos, vast and cold, and the infinitely small, the hidden world of atoms and invisible forces. He writes, "When I consider the short duration of my life, swallowed up in the eternity before and after, the little space which I fill and even can see, engulfed in the infinite immensity of spaces of which I am ignorant and which know me not, I am frightened and am astonished at being here rather than there. For there is no reason why here rather than there, why now rather than then." This is Pascal at his most vulnerable, most honest, most human. This is not the genius who built the Pascaline, not the prodigy who reinvented geometry at 12, not the scientist who proved that vacuums exist. This is a man who has touched the infinite and been burned by it, a man who has stared into the void and found it staring back, a man who knows that reason can take you far, but not far enough, and who is trying desperately to explain that knowledge to a world that still believes science is salvation. But Pascal is also practical, strategic, relentlessly logical. He knows that most people will not be moved by mystical experiences. They did not see the fire. They were not on the bridge. They have not felt the weight of eternity pressing down on their souls. So he decides to meet them where they are, in the realm of calculation, of risk assessment, of cold, pragmatic, rational decision-making. And he asks a simple question.
If you cannot prove whether God exists or not, if the evidence is genuinely ambiguous, if faith is a leap you must take without certainty, how should a rational person decide? And Pascal, who invented probability theory, who taught humanity how to calculate expected value under uncertainty, applies his own mathematics to the ultimate uncertainty. The wager is born. Imagine you must bet on whether God exists. You have no choice. Not betting is still a bet that he does not exist. If you believe and God exists, infinite gain, eternal life, ultimate meaning, perfect joy. If you believe and God does not exist, finite loss. You give up some pleasures, you live by moral constraints, you waste some time in prayer. If you do not believe and God exists, infinite loss, eternal separation, ultimate meaninglessness, perfect despair. If you do not believe and God does not exist, finite gain. You enjoy some extra pleasures, you live without constraints, you avoid hypocrisy. Now calculate the expected value. Infinite gain times any probability, even an infinitesimally small probability, equals infinity. Finite loss times any probability equals a finite number. From a purely rational standpoint, belief is the only logical choice, because the potential gain is infinite and the potential loss is finite. It is not even close. This is Pascal's final gift to the world, his last machine, a calculating engine built not of brass and gears, but of words and logic and relentless, inescapable mathematics. And like the Pascaline, it is both brilliant and controversial. Critics immediately attack it. They call it cynical, manipulative, cold. They say, you cannot choose to believe. Belief is not a calculation. Faith is not a wager. And Pascal would agree, because the wager is not meant to create faith. It is meant to remove the obstacles to faith. It is meant to show that rejecting God is not the rational position, that skepticism is not the default, that doubt is not intellectually superior to belief. It is meant to drag the skeptic, kicking and screaming if necessary, to the edge of the abyss and force them to look down. And then, at the edge, with the void yawning beneath them, Pascal whispers, "Now, jump." Not because the math compels you, but because something beyond math is calling you. Something that held Pascal on a bridge when he should have fallen. Something that filled his room with fire when he was drowning in darkness. Something that cannot be proven, cannot be calculated, cannot be captured in equations, but can be known, can be encountered, can be trusted. Pascal's final years are spent in quiet service. He lives simply, prays constantly, writes when he has strength. His pensées remain unfinished, scattered, fragmentary. But in their incompleteness, they are perfect. Because Pascal is not writing a systematic theology. He is not trying to build an airtight argument. He is trying to communicate what it feels like to be human, to be taught between two infinities, to be terrified and awed and humbled and exalted all at once, to know too much and too little at the same time. And no complete, polished, systematic book could ever capture that. Only fragments can, only broken pieces, only thoughts that start in reason and end in prayer. Pascal dies in 1662. He's 39 years old. His last words are simple: "May God never abandon me." He is buried quietly, without fanfare, without recognition of his genius. But his legacy is just beginning. Because the machines he built, both the physical machine of brass and gears, but the intellectual machine of the wager, will outlive him by centuries. They will force humanity to confront questions we would rather avoid, questions about certainty and doubt, about reason and faith,
about what it means to live in a universe that is both governed by laws and haunted by mystery. Pascal spent his life building bridges between worlds, between mathematics and meaning, between calculation and conscience, between the finite and the infinite. And on one November night, on an actual bridge, he learned that some gaps cannot be bridged by reason alone. Sometimes you must simply trust and fall forward into the fire.
Pascal has just encountered something that no equation can explain. The boy who reinvented geometry at 12. The man who built the first computer at 19. The mathematician who invented probability theory. He's about to walk away from all of it because he's discovered something that reason cannot touch. In Part 2, Pascal's final years, his brutal honesty about the human condition, his devastating critique of reason itself, and the wager, the mathematical proof that will force you to choose between belief and despair. Subscribe now, because this is where it gets dangerous. Part 2 drops soon.